Thank you guys all for joining us. We're so excited to start this presentation. This will be the first introductory coming together to learn about our 6-part yoga series, Cultivate Balance and Self-Mastery. In this series, we will explore bipolar disorder from a unique perspective. Brooke and Violet will connect yoga philosophy and gentle, accessible yoga practices with psychoeducation. Breath awareness, gentle movement, and simple meditation will be repeated and also completely optional. We would like to take this as an opportunity to connect and build a rapport with both myself and Violet and Brooke so that you guys can feel entirely comfortable learning and growing with them. So please take the opportunity to ask any questions in the chat box, the Q&A, and if you're on Facebook, the Facebook Live comment section. And we would love to just build a discussion and see what you guys would like to learn and gain from this experience. So I would like to introduce you all to Brooke Violet. Violet discovered yoga when she was a young teen. Completely immersed in the practice at age 19, she completed her first yoga teacher training and has been wholeheartedly teaching ever since. Violet teaches authentically with compassion, intentionality, and non-judgement. She guides people to cultivate acceptance for what is present for them and honor where they are on their individual path. Diagnosed with bipolar I at the age of 18, she sees how bipolarity occurs in large and small ways, not only in all aspects of life, but in the yoga practice as well. She speaks to the ever-changing rhythms of body and breath, directing attention to the subtlest changes and shifts in perspective as the practice unfolds. Through IBPF, she found yoga therapist Brooke West, who is hands down one of the most influential people in her life and the inspiration for her dream to become a yoga therapist herself. Through a combination of different styles of yoga and meditation, she has not only experienced her own exponential growth in healing, but has seen many people transform into a more centered, balanced, and happier version of themselves. Brooke is certified as a yoga therapist by the International Association of Yoga Therapists, dedicated to sharing yoga with everyone. She has been teaching since 2005 and is an innovative researcher, dedicated educator, and a compassionate peer support group facilitator. She thoughtfully helps integrate and further the well-being of those who have had spiritually transformative experiences. Viewing psychosis, anxiety, and depression through a yogi lens, her collaborations with organizations worldwide help provide hope to individuals and the collective. She aims to reframe mental health as a catalyst for positive transformation and spiritual growth. Traditionally trained at an ashram, Brooke creatively modernizes classic breathing exercises and posture to aid in healing and recovery of trauma, stress, and related ailments. She teaches clients how to become aware of themselves and function in the present moment, how to self-soothe, and how to balance emotions to experience happiness. Thank you so much for joining us today and offering our community this wonderful practice.
You're so welcome. Thank you for having us. So I'm Brooke. I would like to invite everyone to just take a moment to settle in and presence if you're willing to. Nothing that I suggest is a must. But it can be nice to sort of gather the energy and the collective spirit of what it is that we're about to embark on. And if you'd like to join, we would love to share the moment with you. What I like to suggest is bringing your awareness to your posture. We're talking about the nervous system, both on a physical level and on a subtle level. So you might take a moment to consider the natural curves of your spine, and in particular, the back of the neck. And allow the back of the neck to be relaxed and open. Taking a moment to notice the breath. And you might notice your seat, where you're connected to your seat or the floor or the earth or all of those things. And from your seat, if you feel to, on an in-breath, you might draw your awareness up the body, up the spine, past the neck, toward the prefrontal cortex, the spiritual eye, exhaling and relaxing the throat, the neck, the jaw, relaxing the eyes. Eyes closed or open, as if to become receptive, not seeking experience. Observing the activity of the mind, any thought habits or patterns. Just being sweet with yourself. Again, inhaling if you feel to from your seat upward, up the spine toward the spiritual eye or the prefrontal cortex. Relaxing the shoulders, then exhaling, relaxing the heart, the throat, the neck. Lifting your gaze upward to direct subtle energy, attention. Inhaling. Exhaling again as you feel to. You might take a moment to bring your awareness, as you do, to the emotional field. Again, relaxing the gaze, being sweet with what you find. And focusing on the exhalation, if you feel to, as you breathe out, you might gently release the weight of the heart muscle, whatever that means to you. Allowing the respiratory diaphragm to meet the heart like a safety net as you breathe out all the way. Spine stays long and strong. Relaxing the floor of the lower jaw and the roof of the mouth. Take another moment to simply observe, perhaps allowing your focal point to be the exhalation and the point between the eyebrows, if you'd like. And as we prepare to come back, if you feel to, you might bring your awareness once again to those poles, the seat, the brow, and the channel between the two. Exhaling, relaxing the weight of the heart muscle, the back of the neck, the roof of the mouth. Observing any shift of subtle energy as a result of your practice. And keeping the gaze relaxed as you feel to. If the eyes are closed, you might begin to open them, gently allowing the light in as opposed to drawing your consciousness outward. Keeping the heart relaxed, staying soft and receptive. And coming back when you're ready. Thank you.
Thank you for starting us off with that. That was really wonderful.
Thank you.
Yeah. And now I think it'd be a really great opportunity to kind of share your, individual stories from your voices and yeah, why you're here today as well to share this practice with our community.
Violet?
I will begin on that. And I just have to say, Brooke, I would love to kind of get to how we work together and how I know you. But Brooke was my yoga therapist. And so you were speaking to me again way back when we were working together. It's so special, feels so good. So I think I would love to share sort of my standard story of my experience with bipolar, and then also how yoga has been such a parallel to how bipolar is a part of my life, and how yoga has really allowed me to see it from a different perspective, from an accepting perspective. And yoga is a language that I would choose to describe my bipolar disorder, as opposed to maybe 100% the standard way. A little bit more of a merging of the two is how I like to talk about it and view it. So I was diagnosed when I was 18. So I was a freshman in college, had a great first semester, come home for my winter break, and I just exploded with that mania of happiness, of euphoria, of having this feeling like I kind of got it figured out. I kind of like life's good. I know what the deal is. So it was almost in a sense a classical, the way that mania is described, that grandiose, expansive thoughts, euphoria, happiness. I just felt a lot of love for everyone around me. So coupled with that was I wasn't sleeping, I wasn't really eating. I just had so much energy, so many racing thoughts, so many ideas. And ideas that I thought could come to fruition like right now, not later on. Everything was kind of right now. There was this sense of urgency for everything. And at the same time, this truly beautiful experience of emotion that I was feeling. And eventually it led into hospitalization for me. So it became beyond myself, beyond what I could really control with logic, with my body. I, sort of began to lose that control. And so the hospitalization experience was extremely traumatic. It was devastating to kind of hit what our world's reality is when you're told and when you acknowledge that what you just experienced was just an illness, was just a chemical reaction in your brain. And I like to point out that I believe that as well. I like to believe what science has shown us about how this is something that happens in the brain. And I also like to acknowledge the experience that there were emotions that were profound and beautiful. And I think to ignore those would be a disservice. And that's where my yoga came in later on. But it was, and it has been, in a sense, a long, windy journey with bipolar disorder. I've had 3 major episodes where it was mania followed by depression. And they've been challenging, very raw and real, very, very difficult experiences. And it's difficult to navigate sort of your place in society while, speaking for myself, while I felt so different from everybody else. And it was in that last episode where I sort of swinging into the depressive part of my cycle, that I was just looking, kind of grasping at anything that would give me a language that I felt like I could really get down with. I just couldn't, it didn't make sense to me. I just wanted to make sense of why this was happening, what this all meant. And so in that, I went to the International Bipolar Foundation, and I was reading a blog about yoga, which was something that I've always had a passion for. And I found Brooke, yoga therapist Brooke, who was so accepting and understanding. It was the first time I told my detailed, raw story without someone really batting an eye at my experience. And I think that in that, ever since, I have had this newfound level of acceptance, of compassion, of to forgive the shame that I put on myself for my experience and for this, what we call a disorder. So it's been a long journey to sort of get to the perspective that I have right now that feels more grounded. It feels more true to me to look at this disorder and realize that as abnormal of a thing it feels like, it's also kind of a normal way of life, just an extreme version. So that is what really yoga has taught me. And I think more than anything, if I can be as clear and concise moving forward with how yoga philosophy can really parallel what science is telling us about this disorder, and how they can weave together to create more of a beautiful interpretation of you with bipolar. So of course there's many details of the in-between, but that is sort of my general experience and how I've gotten to where I am now, and the support of yoga and Brooke. So Brooke.
You're so sweet, Violet. Thank you. That was so eloquent. It's so beautiful to watch you bloom and how grounded you've become through your yoga practice. And articulate and honest and open. It's inspiring to me. Thank you for sharing that. I'm a little bit more private about my experience. My experience was really traumatic, super shaming. I was over medicated and became invalid for a while. I felt like I had to really crawl my way out of the hole that I felt like I had been placed in on my own. And so I carry a lot of grief and a lot of anger still about the experience. I was in college too. And I think that being in a different environment allowed me the space to explore subconsciously or otherwise the trauma of my family of origin. So I also felt that love in my body and that like a sense of freedom in that first mania that I experienced. And I too was hospitalized. I think the thing for me was that I was trying to express myself and I didn't have anyone to share what I needed to share with. And so I think the mania was kind of like an octopus, trying to find something to grasp on that I could like start to recover with the help of. That was in 95. And then I sort of started dabbling in yoga in like 98. And then I started getting really serious about yoga in 2002 when Bikram yoga came to San Luis Obispo where I lived. And I still live here in this county in California. And really knew like in that one of those first 3 classes that this was the thing. I didn't know what that meant, but I knew that I needed to keep going. And so I developed a daily practice. And over the next 2.5 years, I transformed my social life. I transformed my body. I transformed my mood regulation. My life transformed. And I went to yoga teacher training to find out why yoga was stabilizing my moods. At that time, there wasn't really any yoga research. And when I landed at yoga teacher training, the first thing they taught me was how to meditate. And I wasn't expecting that either. So then I went down this road of more exploration about, classical yoga philosophy, meditation, that sort of thing, and kind of developed a spiritual practice that kept me linked to the spiritual experience of my mania and my life, really. I come from a line of devout Christian scientists. And so I had a devotional, I think there's something in my DNA that's kind of devotional and also connected to something greater than myself. And that part wasn't addressed in my recovery through the Western medical model, and that is part of. I think that was really frustrating, and I think that's part of the anger that I still carry, because that piece of it is so profound and potent and personal and intimate. When I was being told, this is how the collective, this is how this is consensus reality says that, you are now this, you are deemed this, and the focus of your life is going to be this diagnosis, and you're never going to X, Y, and Z, and you're always going to have to X, Y, and Z. The spiritual aspect of it, no one can control that but me. That's my own perception. And so I think I probably held really tight to that because I needed some independence and autonomy. I needed to maintain some agency over my experience. I didn't anticipate becoming a yoga teacher. I literally went to learn more about yoga and why it was helping me. And in the process of that, I did start teaching, and I went back to the ashram the next year, and I went through meditation teacher training, or restorative yoga teacher training, and teacher training for yoga for cancer and cardiac health survivors. And that kind of set me on a track for yoga therapy that didn't exist yet. In 2011, my school developed a yoga therapy program, and I went through that, and now I'm in private practice, and I lead group classes, and I'm doing it online, and my reach is fairly broad. And I still process the trauma of my growing up. I've been in Al-Anon, which is a 12-step recovery group for friends and families of alcoholics and addicts. My older sister committed suicide in '99. She suffered from addiction, and you know, before I became ill, we grew up in LA, and you know, we had access to the best medical care, and nobody could decide what her diagnosis was. She was narcissist, she was borderline, she was bipolar, she was an addict, she was a mess. And you know, she was lost. And we are all of those things, I think, depending on our environment, our outer environment and our inner environment. So yoga has helped me really manage my inner environment, and then recognize what's happening in my outer environment that causes stress that my bandwidth can't take much of. And so there's an opportunity to become aware of my energy, and then to redirect it, and to you know, regulate my nervous system, because I know where I don't want to go, and I know where I could go, and I stay really close to the spiritual aspects of living, because it helps me to take my power back, I guess, when I felt like my power was taken away with the hospitalization, the diagnosis, the subsequent over medication, and having to find a path that worked for me. I don't tell my story very much. I don't want to be known as the bipolar yoga teacher. And I live in a fairly small community. And so I do keep that story to myself a bit more than maybe I would like. And I think that maybe I'm kind of coming out in a way by reaching out to IBPF and offering this. I know that this helps. I've seen it with my clients. I've experienced it myself. There isn't enough research on yoga therapy and bipolar disorder. And I would like to help to initiate some sort of evidence-based research on what yoga does for mood and attitude and physical health and all of the things. And so that's part of why I'm here. I'm also here just because I want to grow my own community and feel connected, to be able to help and serve, but also to share experiences and resources, and to uplift humanity, quite frankly. Inner peace leads to world peace. And ultimately, it might sound idealistic, but that's really what motivates me. What I've experienced and what I know culturally and evolutionarily we can move toward if we embrace our potential.
I think piggybacking off of that, Brooke, is sort of, I think both of us share this, I know that we share this, that from how yoga has affected us personally, is that you want to give that back. And you want to, I mean, I know I really want to share that with everybody. And I think that a huge part of what happens is there's so many shifts that can take course, whether it be from the information that you're receiving from the out and integrating in, but also from the effects that you can work on from the inside that translate out. So I think that one of the things that yoga and meditation, and really they are one and the same. One is meditation and movement, and one is more just meditation in stillness. And I think that from those places, you're working on your inner workings so that when life comes at you, it affects you differently. And this is something that I have experienced personally for myself. And I just wanted to comment on something that someone else commented in the chat box, and that is that sometimes the people around you, there is a label stamped on you, and there is stigma around this diagnosis, and it can be, I speak from personal experience as well, that I don't always want to share with people. That's not necessarily, sort of your introductory conversation that you have with every single person, because I know that I've experienced the stigma and the judgment and the assumptions that are made around what this diagnosis means. And so part of that is even the people that are closest to us. Part of that is even family and loved ones, and that can hurt, to not feel understood. To not feel understood, I think, is a very, very lonely place to be. And so something that yoga has taught me is that, really at the end of the day, for myself, my own inner strength, my own inner connection to who I am really provides me with everything that I need, and the rest ripples out and follows. So really starting from my own inner environment of realizing that being alone without people and being lonely are two very different things. I think being lonely is how we can feel on the inside when we feel misunderstood. And that is, yoga has allowed me to find compassion for those who don't understand. And yoga has allowed me to see that not everyone has the capability of grasping sort of the different components of bipolar. And through yoga, there's this ability to really witness and accept what is, how you feel, and how others feel. And there's this really sense of peace and peace of mind that happens where the judgment that I was feeling from other people, it just was refracted right back off. It doesn't really touch me as deeply. It still hurts. I still have wounds that, can get poked sometimes when there's judgment or stigma or assumptions thrown my way with just being labeled as bipolar. But yoga has really kind of given me this peaceful shield around myself and accepting how important I am and how important my inner strength is and my own inner workings. And that was a transformation that happened from within. So really, I think that what Brooke and I want to give in these upcoming sessions is that empowering you. So I think of myself less of a yoga teacher and more of like the tour guide. And you are your own teacher. So this is all empowerment for you. No one can do this for you. Only you can do it for yourself. So this is truly an exploration within, and then letting that ripple out into the world. And it has this inevitable effect that is powerful. It's beautiful. It's that's what we are really looking to give everyone. And I know we could probably talk about a little more what we'll do in the sessions, Brooke, like the talk and then the practice.
Yeah, we could. There's so much I want to say, and too, to comment on what you just said, the loneliness and how like my intimacy with my higher power is part of what saves me from my loneliness, you know. There's some comments too. We have something on a chat, and we have a Q&A happening too. And this is exciting to be able to share with the community and answer questions. There are going to be some specific questions like, what can I do at night and in the morning? And any advice on how to deal with family members who don't respect that yoga is my primary self-care practice. It totally can relate to that. And I want to say too that if I can share, Violet, I haven't asked you permission to share a little bit about what my kind of perspective was a little bit on working with you and what you were. Yeah. Okay.
Very open.
So one of the things Violet said, like when we first met, she needed to share what she was experiencing. She needed to share it with somebody who understood and who wasn't going to be judgmental. And also someone who had gone through a lot of growing pains with all of these behavioral and environmental issues that affect bipolar disorder and the like level of stress and trauma and presentation of the symptoms. And this question, I think, that Adam has written about your family and how to deal with it, that's huge, you know. And so yoga has, yoga has certain principles. They're called the yamas and niyamas, that are sort of the kind of 10 commandments of yoga philosophy, of how to treat ourselves and how to treat other people. So that's something that I think maybe Violet and I have both really leaned on when we're not sure from within how to deal with things. This gives a template of, you know, non-harming, non-stealing. I like to think of it as being honest, being generous. I prefer to not affirm the negative, but it's the way they're written. And then, so there are 5 of those, the don'ts. And then there are 5 of the do's. We want to talk about this a little bit more because we think that it's essential for moving through the world in a way that's comfortable and to create communities that are sustainable and functional. And I would love to give more advice on that, but I mean, I don't know exactly. I think it's a great point, and it deserves to be explored a little bit more. You know, we don't have, in my opinion, we don't have the best social skills in our culture. And so learning social skills, you know, for me, 12-step recovery's really helped for me to be on a path of self-reflection, and then being able to, you know, interact with people with appropriate boundaries, from having checked in with myself, from being connected, associated with what are my feelings, what just happened, what are my thoughts, how am I breathing, what do I need, how are they going to take it, you know, the letting go of that, the detachment, or from a yogic perspective, the non-attachment, so that you don't have to reverse engineer having become attached and then having to detach and having it be painful. So maybe from that, what I just said, you can see how there's like a micro and a macro of, you know, what's happening in our world, in our personal life, and then pulling the camera back so that we can see a wider frame of, you know, how is this a communal situation, and, you know, what part do I have and what do I have control over, and what do I need to let go, and, you know, how can I figure out what the difference is?
Yeah, I think that a lot of it is, I felt before I really did the dive into yoga that the perception that I had of myself was a lot further away. I didn't really have a great understanding of who I believe, you know, I really am, and how I can take from who I am and then navigate throughout the world. So I think that something that was difficult for me, having the diagnosis of then this question of who am I this thing, does this define me, and then having yoga as this place where you begin to explore your own inner workings, your own inner dialogue of being able to, I think, just really being able to be comfortable and like Brooke said, being able to say, okay, this is what is good for me and my best self, and this is what I can let go of because it's not serving me anymore. And sometimes that's just an emotional attachment that, you know, I might have to something, that it is a close person in my life, that they can still be a close person to me, but my emotional attachment that I have to their opinions and their thoughts, that might be something that I'm willing to let go of because I have a stronger sense of who I am and what I really need to operate at my best, most peaceful self. And I think that Brooke was speaking to that. It's this journey of awareness. So one of the biggest things that we will talk about throughout this series is sort of what yoga is, what meditation is. And I think the overarching theme is this ability to really witness, this ability to be your own observer of not only how you feel, but how when someone else is coming at you with an emotion, how to interpret that, how to take that on or let it go. So I think that it's a huge exploration, and using the yoga philosophy, which I'm very excited to talk about, because it's just these awesome fundamentals of what you can do for yourself and then what you can do for others to create the relationships with the world, not just, you know, human to human interaction, but it's a dynamic interplay from your inner and outer worlds and how they come together. So
yeah, I was struck by Violet's need to share the dynamics of her family and how having a sounding board about what was real and what was potentially imagined, because we're questioning our reality when we're told that we have this psychotic disorder and that we're seeing the world like we no longer have good judgment. And if we give away that agency, we really need people to reflect back to us. And there's so much isolation that comes with the shame and the diagnosis that then that starts getting really distorted. So yeah, that was significant that you were able to articulate what was happening in your family dynamic and find your own place in that dynamic in relation to what their perceptions were and their hangups were and their, you know, their fears were. And their hopes were for you. And that's kind of a normal thing that happens in like human development when you're in your 20s anyway, for anybody, individuating. And so throw in the monkey wrench of you have this like lifelong mood disorder. It's a lot to integrate so we need one another. And that's part of what yoga includes too, is sangha, or community. It's a piece, and because it's human. You know, yoga is not religion. Yoga is like human. It's a human science. It's a science of living. So, like Violet was saying, service. You know, we have this natural desire to serve and offer what it is that we've learned. Because we're humans. I think humans are generally serviceful. It's a natural path. Seeking community, that's natural. Being careful, you know, full of care. That becomes more accessible. Now that we're like moving toward sort of the end of our session, there's one other thing that I keep wanting to say about the research piece of it. So yoga is an art and a science. The art of it is how we express the traditions, the techniques, the practices, and the philosophy. And then the science piece is, you know, what's measurable and replicable. They have found that mindful movement, it could be Tai Chi, Qigong, yoga, where you're thinking about what you're doing as you're breathing and moving, that does something in particular to the brain that turns it allows you to become more aware. It does something to one of the brain structures. It helps you to become more aware, but it does something to the other brain structure that causes you to judge. So you're more aware, but you judge less. And so it creates this sort of peace and, expanded consciousness. When we're in that expanded consciousness, we're considering other people and the planet and our choices and all that stuff. And so if we're around people who haven't altered their brain state that way, there's going to be a, what's the word? There's going to be like a block. Yeah. So we're changing our consciousness, and other people maybe aren't necessarily on the same track or at the same pace or whatever. And so, despite the disempowerment and the disenfranchisement that can come with the disorder, the diagnosis, or our own perception, we have a lot of influence, each one of us. And so navigating that and negotiating that is a constant practice. Mm-hmm. It's a constant practice of awareness and forgiveness and compassion and, all that stuff. So that all just, it's all hand in hand. It's all concomitant. It's happening all at the same time, So good on you for being engaged, Adam. And yeah.
Should we talk about, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to ask, since we are getting closer to the end of the time, if there's anything within this next week before we have our next session together that our community can practice. There's something they can do every day, grounding themselves. What's an easy thing for them to first be introduced into this practice of becoming more aware?
Great question. So I don't know what Violet's going to say, but I think we might want to say the same thing. Something that we talked about, which can be a lifelong practice, and I think is one of the most sophisticated and maybe the most difficult practices of them all, is simple breath awareness. And the exhalation is the sort of relaxation phase of the breath. So vasodilation occurs when we exhale, and at the end of the exhale, there's a little pause. It's like a hammock that we can swing in before we inhale. When we are inhaling, that's the stress response. We're contractive. When we think about like taking a deep breath, everybody always goes, but if we're already in stress response, we're breathing really shallowly. And so we're holding and we're not allowing ourselves to exhale and expand and allow oxygen to flow and all that stuff. So one of the things that I always recommend to my students and my clients is to practice simple breath awareness as often as you can. If you have OCD, you can find yourself thinking about spinning on whatever it is that you're spinning on, and then redirect it to your breath. Use that energy to do something effective and efficient and helpful. So bringing your awareness to your breath and asking yourself, when was the last time I exhaled? And your body kind of knows, like it feels the echo of like, it's been a while. It's been a while since I've emptied what's at the bottom of my lungs. And what's at the bottom of your lungs is feeding your brain. And so to draw breath down all the way into the bottoms of your lungs and then to exhale from there, maybe until you feel like you're going to gasp. I don't want to cause pain or, anxiety or anything for anybody, but there is power in exhaling. And so that's something that I suggest. I've got a million tiny tools, like put your legs up the wall and do deep breathing for even one breath. Doesn't have to be 5 minutes or 20 minutes. Like, do one, try it once, you know, little bits over a long period of time. That's what creates change. So not stressing about, should I do this? Do I have to do that? I didn't do enough. Like, cut that out and just do one thing and be sweet with yourself and be proud of what you've done. Notice the shift, if there is any.
I think that sometimes it starts off as subtle shifts. So when you can take a second to have that breath awareness, or just stop and get still for a second, stand still, maybe close your eyes, and then notice how you feel afterwards, because there is a subtle shift that happens when you come into that present moment awareness of what you're feeling in your body, and sending the breath deep down into your lungs and focusing on the exhale. And it could just be one round of breath. And then you say, okay, I stopped and I noticed and I witnessed, and maybe I'll do it again. But if you could try to, I think, get a stamp for every day of even just noticing one inhale and one exhale, that's an accomplishment.
Yeah, it is. It's true.
The most simple and difficult practices to stop and to witness.
Yeah. And I would say, just adding to that is, you know, when you say to yourself, gosh, I should probably take a deep breath or something like that, trick yourself and see if you can start that next deep breath with your exhale. As opposed to saying to myself, okay, I need to take a deep breath. See if you can ask yourself, okay, I need to take a deep breath. Can I exhale here? It might feel like you're like squeezing yourself of everything that you have, but maybe that's appropriate to train yourself again, to become comfortable with, to tone the diaphragm, to, you know, tone the muscles of the pelvic floor and the abdomen. Like, start learning how to breathe the body and create a rhythm at your own, like, command, so that that starts to affect the heart and the hormones and all of it, you know, everything inside here.
And
it's huge. What'd you say?
And, you know, no judgment too of,
yeah, right.
You notice, you're like, oh my gosh, I can only exhale for two seconds. You know, there's no judgment at where it begins. No judgment at all.
And then that's another practice. Like, you're not only breathing, but you're practicing non-judgment, which is going to, like, strengthen that muscle, which is going to help serve, you know, exponentially.
And I think that part of, I guess I can kind of give a general layout of what to expect in the sessions to come, which is going to be, I think, sort of a component of talking and this free-form discussion that can come up in the chat boxes and the Q&A that might organically shift what we spend the most time talking about. But otherwise, with there sort of being a structure of some sort of yoga philosophy, how it applies to life, and then some sort of practice, whether it be breath awareness, whether it be simple meditations, and then also different practices such as restorative yoga and maybe a little bit of gentle movement, gentle flow. And I know we listed kind of all of what you might need in that initial announcement. So I think that if there is stuff that's coming up in these chats and these Q&As, then Brooke and I are so happy to adapt to that within our general structures of what we have yet to come, which will be talking about the yoga philosophy, these big concepts of duality and the natural rhythms and the waves and the cycles that are a part of life that yoga philosophy is recognized for thousands of years. It's an ancient philosophy and practice.
And how it relates to bipolar disorder specifically. Yeah, what our perception of it, our perspective, you know. How the breathing techniques can affect the mood, you know. Some of them may be appropriate for you at noon and not at 6 p.m., you know, like, we're changing all the time. So there's so many different tools. Once we know some of the tools, and we can apply them based on what we're assessing in our own self, what we might need, where we might want to get to or go as a as a result of the vehicle of the technique. I also just wanted to say one thing about, the question often comes up, what's the difference between a yoga teacher and a yoga therapist? And yoga therapy, there are a couple of things that differentiate it from yoga teaching, and every yoga therapist is a yoga teacher and a meditation teacher as well. Assessment and research are two of the things that set yoga therapy apart from yoga teaching. So if I have a client or I'm offering a yoga therapy class, what I'm going to be doing is assessing each client or the people in the class, you know, based on a specific like medical issue, generally speaking. It could be psychological or physical, so that we can determine what route we want to take to create the most effective practices for like specific and oftentimes measurable differences, whether it's measurable by your own reflection or, you know, even statistically significant changes. So I just wanted to say that part of the organic nature of the way that I work is to see what's presenting itself. These comments and stuff, they're so important and wonderful to stay engaged and allow me to use my intuition as I also use my expertise and my training to help guide people. So I just wanted to say that there's some scientific differences. I'm also like broadly educated. And one other thing about, you know, psychosis as spiritual awakening, this is the thing that is the most interesting to me to explore. There's a TED Talk with Phil Borges, Borges, where he talks about psychosis as spiritual awakening. And I've been involved with the Emerging Proud campaign in the UK and Shades of Awakening, and I'm also an ASSIST trained peer support facilitator, ACISTE.org, and I've also been trained by IMHU, which is Integrative Mental Health for You. So we're looking to create a new paradigm. There may be a diagnosis, and also this may be a catalyst for personal transformation. So that's part of how I bring yoga and that piece together, and really want to support the community that has diagnosis of bipolar disorder, because there are so many of us. It's like the 6th leading cause of disability in the world or something like that. Like, it's a big deal. So just seeing it as trauma, not, you know, as a trauma response, just like addiction, just like borderline, just like all of it, you know, and sort of unwinding the Fort Knox kind of feel that we have about, like, you're in there, you're stuck, you're like, there's ways to come out, and yoga is just such a beautiful, gentle, and socially acceptable way to do it, you know, at this point. Thank heaven.
Yeah, well, I think this has been a really wonderful, just kind of introductory, and the conversations that you guys have been really, really beautiful, and really great way for, you know, myself and the community to learn more about you and about the practice of yoga itself. So thank you both for being vulnerable and sharing your stories and being open and honest and being so giving to spread this to our community. And I'm very excited myself to be along with this journey and to be learning with you guys and to participate in the upcoming sessions.
Thank you, Emily. Thank you so much.
Of course. So everyone, please make sure to join us next week, Wednesday at 10 a.m. Pacific time, so we can all come together again and continue to learn and grow as humans. And this is going to be a really great time. So I hope to see you all then next week.
Thank you.
If you have any questions in the meantime, or if you have anything that you'd like to be involved in the sessions, feel free to email me at info@ibpf.org, and I can relay that to Brooke and Violet, and we can work together to create what you guys want to see too.
Yeah, exactly.
So have a really wonderful week. See you guys next week.
Thank you. Namaste. Bye, everybody.